This is BBC Two, living life in the fast lane.
Don't move for the next 30 minutes, because tonight on Top Gear we look at the massive motoring sensation that is...
the Subaru phenomenon.
Also tonight, Kate goes all Essex in a Vitara, a Cosworth Vitara. I go karting with a Formula One wannabe. And Quentin clues us up on car prices.
There was a time when the most interesting thing about Subaru was that it read, "You are a bus," backwards. But then, in 1993, this happened. They launched the Impreza, and it lit the blue touch paper to a whole new phenomenon. On its World Rally debut in Finland, it finished an amazing second. Then, in '95...
Well, now the day's big story in rallying, with Colin McRae clinching the first ever World Championship for Britain.
Subaru's success continued, with manufacturers' titles in '96 and '97. And now, with Richard Burns, they lead both drivers and makes tables in the 2000 championship. To celebrate their victories, Subaru launched several limited edition versions, like the 22B, the RB5, and now this.
The P1 being touted as the best Impreza yet. Initially, only 500 were to be made, but interest was phenomenal, so the run has been doubled, though all 1,000 cars have been sold at 31.5 grand each. The first thing that strikes you about the P1 is that it takes a will of iron not to be naughty. Keep the turbo at arm's length and it's perfectly usable around town, but the car strains at the leash to be let loose. Hit around 3,500 RPM though, let the turbo do its thing and... Subaru's claiming 280 brake, 155 miles an hour and a 0 to 60 time of 4.6 seconds. All in a package that's as docile as a rampant Rottweiler. It is rapid, though if you want to slow things down, the ABS brakes would stop a train. Now, don't think that ProDrive has just glued on some bits and bobs to make this car look butch. The front and rear spoiler do actually aid aerodynamics. So much so that when this thing is slicing through the air at 100 miles an hour, it uses less power than the standard turbo. But may I suggest you don't go proving that claim on public highways. This is the first time ProDrive have put their name to a road car, but there is more to it than some stick-on badges and rally-styling cues. Their wealth of knowledge, acquired from years of motorsport competition, has had a part to play in the making of the P1. This includes the chassis, which ProDrive claim is the ultimate for British roads. So, is it the best? Well, if you like it rock solid, then yes, it is. But the flip side to that is you have to constantly drive this car. You can't afford to let it dictate. But that is a little bit tricky when you're steering this car with a wheel the size of the London Eye, and that does detract from the driving experience. But I love these seats, which give an authentic rally feel, and I adore the short throw gear change, which is like ramming home a rifle bolt. But do we need another special edition Impreza? This is the 6th in 5 years. Well, all I can say is that the car is more fun and looks far better than all its predecessors and makes the Subaru P1 a package that would be pretty hard to beat.
But it's not impossible. I really do think you should stick around.
Once upon a time, a West Midlands garage rescued a Suzuki Vitara from a scrap heap for the princely sum of £225 and lavished a small fortune on it. They changed the wheels, gave it a new engine, and sprayed it a pretty colour. And 2 years and £30,000 later, they'd created the Predator.
We called it the Predator because it's got a 2-litre Sierra Cosworth engine. It's permanent four-wheel drive. It's got chromatic paintwork, which actually changes colour, so the car itself changes its image. It will do 160 miles per hour, and it will eat everything that is on the road.
Bet you never thought you'd hear that about a Vitara. But then again, you probably never thought that someone would spend £30,000 on one either. So why the Predator? Well, probably because this 280 brake horsepower beast will do nothing to treat you gently. In fact, driving it at all is something of a Herculean task. You need the right thigh of an English prop forward to get any response from the throttle, and the left shoulder of a shot putter to change gear. The steering is wildly eccentric, and it's very, very noisy. But you can't resist having a go. Now, were this car ever to go into production, what would you use it for? I know, it's the ultimate performance 4x4. Well, not really. It may be four-wheel drive, but it doesn't feel particularly stable. And it's so big and heavy that despite knowing you've got that great bear pit of power under your bonnet, you can't get away from the feeling that you're driving something as unwieldy as the NEC. OK then, if it's not a performance 4x4, perhaps it's a legitimate big butch monster of an off-roader. Well, again, not really, because the chassis has been lowered so much it would trip over anything larger than a molehill. And if you'd spent £5 on a paint job, would you want to get it dirty? OK, got it. It's not for using, it's for cruising very slowly around town so that everyone can get a good look at it. It's possibly the only way you'll ever get noticed in a Vitara. So don't spend £300 on a haircut like David Beckham, spend £30,000 on your Suzuki Vitara and get all the attention you want.
As I journey through life, my thoughts wander like a lonely cloud. 1,000 questions race across my mind.
Why is the third hand on a watch called the second hand? Why do the expressions slow up and slow down mean the same thing? Why is the word abbreviation so long? And what goes through the mind of a teenage boy on a typical day? Hang on, what was that last one again? Oh, of course. With the British Grand Prix this weekend, every kid's mind is full of Formula One fever and their hearts are set on becoming the next Jenson Button.
Now, driving these 600 brake, 200 mile an hour F1 cars may be a pipe dream, but remember, from tiny acorns, oak trees grow. And practically every one of today's Formula One drivers started here at the karting track. Schumacher, Hakkinen, Herbert and even young Button all cut their teeth in these dinky races, working their way up the ladder.
And McLaren, who know a thing or two about decent drivers, have got their hopes up about this young chap, Lewis Hamilton, who's 3 years into a 10-year driver support programme. Lucky bunny.
I started remote control car racing when I was about 4, I think. And my dad decided to buy me a go-kart for Christmas when I was 7. And we entered the kart race when I was 8 years old. And we won our first race, which was really good.
Now, you're 15 now, and what do you race today?
I race in a class called Formula A, mainly in Italy, just preparing myself for the World Championship.
How did you get involved in McLaren?
In 1995, I'd won the British Championship, and I was invited to the Autosport Awards, and I met Ron Dennis there. And then the second year, Ron Dennis brought out the McLaren Mercedes Champions of the Future series, and I entered that and won it my first year, and I won it the second year. I think Ron had a pretty good idea of how good I was, and decided to bring me on board.
So what are your feelings about Lewis doing so well?
Well, I'm obviously quite proud and quite impressed as well, because, you know, what started out as a family fun weekend has turned into a future career, hopefully, for Lewis.
And what do you have to do for McLaren, and what are they doing for you?
Basically, they provide all the financial assistance and technical support that Lewis needs to see his career through from karting to Formula 1.
Forget F1, how's Lewis against VBH1? We're racing these 100cc karts which have a top speed of about 80 and can hit 60 in well under 5 seconds. You won't find these machines in a fairground because they're the business. And when it came to the first corner, I just barged my way through. The quickest way around the track is to use the invisible racing line. You must go wide on the entry and exit of corners but cut the apex as close as possible. But when there's more than just one view on the circuit, the racing line becomes fiercely fought for. How did he get in front? Suspension is non-existent. There's no clutch either, just an accelerator and a brake under your left foot. The very short wheelbase gives excellent agility and the high-revving single-cylinder engine rockets you forwards. Lewis must have a bigger rocket. Right, I'll teach him to respect his elders. A quick shimmy up his inside will do the trick. Marvellous. Racing these 100cc karts really teaches you the skills needed to progress, eventually, into Formula 1. And Lewis certainly is on the right track. Straight past me, but he deserved to win our race. Just.
Well, if that's given you a taste for racing, then may I suggest you trot down to your local kart centre and have a go yourself. You'll love it. As for you, Lewis, I think that was a fluke. Are you up for a real F1 challenge? Red light. Green light. Go!
Earlier on in the programme, Vicky was mightily impressed by the new P1 Subaru Impreza. But what would you have if you stripped off its steel shell and clad it in plastic? A Delfino Feroce, of course. And I know what you're thinking. Remember, you don't judge a book by its cover. Literally translated, Delfino Feroce means ferocious dolphin. But don't be fooled into thinking that this is a new Italian creation. It's made in Stafford. Based on the Impreza's running gear, it's shorter, lighter and faster than the saloon. What I can't understand is why nobody's done this before. It seems like since time began, from TVR onwards, if you built a British sports car, you simply stuck in the Rover V8 and that was that. But forget your burbling V8. Listen to this. Now those are the sort of dolphin sounds that I can relax to. This pre-production Feroce has the standard 215 bhp engine and is very lively, but given the full 280 horsepower version, it promises a 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds, and that's McLaren F1 territory. It's may thump over the occasional bump, but in general Delfino have done an excellent job in adapting the Subaru running gear for their Feroce sports car. The level of grip is very high indeed. Steering feedback is really good. It makes the car come alive in your hands. You're very much a part of the driving experience. The brakes, however, need a pretty firm prod to make them work, but when they do, they work really well. I actually prefer that to a system where you just touch the pedal and everything locks up. So, plenty of promise on the inside, but what about that outside? Well, that depends on exactly where you look at it from. It looks great from over here! Delfino hope to sell 45 cars in their first year, with both soft and hard-top versions priced from £39,500, £8,000 more than a P1, but giving a whole new experience. The only trouble is I can't fully appreciate the experience because I'm sitting too high with the steering wheel down on my lap, and every time I change gear I bang my elbow on that console. Now, OK, this is a prototype, but it's still a bit worrying when they can't get those basics right from the word go. This Feroce is still a long way off being the end product, but it definitely deserves a revisit when it's finished. Hopefully, unlike so many other promising projects, this is one British sports car which, being a dolphin, will swim rather than sink. Now, I'm not about to suggest you start cancelling orders for Boxster S's and M Roadsters, but if you fail to get your name down for one of the 1000 P1s, then this Feroce may just well ease your disappointment.
We've waited 10.5 months for it. It's 745 pages long. It's the government's report on the price of new cars in the UK. Tonight, I'll be explaining exactly what this haystack of paper means to you and proving that you can already, right here and now in the UK, buy brand new cars at even less than the government recommends. But first, a bit of background.
2 years ago, Top Gear was first to beat the drum. We complained that some new cars were as much as 40% cheaper in mainland Europe and proved it by saving £7 grand on a Rover from Holland. Since then, every newspaper and magazine has joined the fight, which is why the government asked the Competition Commission to look at new car prices.
But my problem with this weighty tome is that it won't make any difference at all. You see, the government recommends in here that car makers reduce their prices by 10 to 12%. So that means we could go into a Ford dealership and buy a 1.4 CL Focus like this for £11,700. But what the government doesn't know is that you could go out tomorrow to a car supermarket right here in the UK, no need to go to Europe, and buy the same 1.4 CL Ford Focus for £9,000. And that is a discount not of 10 to 12%, but of a massive 30%. But what else does the report recommend? Well, at the moment, fleet buyers get up to 40% discount on the price of new cars, and that's a discount that you and I subsidise. The report recommends that car dealers are allowed the same levels of discount, so they in turn can pass it on to the consumer. The mandarins at Whitehall also want recommended retail prices to be abolished. With the current system, if a dealer openly advertises cars at substantially less than RRP, the carmaker concerned could, if they wanted to, pull their franchise, and that stifles competition and low prices. Even better news, the industry won't be able to massage their sales figures anymore. Because the sales top 10 is measured by cars registered rather than those physically sold, for years car makers have been merrily pre-registering thousands of cars themselves to boost their sales figures. It's naughty, and it's high time it stopped.
When we asked Secretary for Trade and Industry Stephen Byers for an interview, he had to decline as he didn't want to prejudice any response from the motor industry. And if the motor makers don't convince the government otherwise, these recommendations will become law on June the 10th this year. But even now, you can buy new cars at well below the government's recommendations. We rang a few car supermarkets and found these prices. A Fiat Punto Sporting for $8,999, that's a saving of 21%. An Alfa Romeo 156 2-litre cellar speed at $15,999, a saving of 27%. A Vauxhall Astra 16-valve LS for 10 grand, a saving of 28%. And finally, a Ford Mondeo 1.6 LX for £9,999. That is an astonishing 30% off list price. And all these are brand new, right-hand drive UK spec cars.
So how has this absurd situation been allowed to develop? Well, for the last 16 years, car makers in the UK have been hiding behind a piece of European legislation called block exemption. I've got another word for it. It's called monopoly. 94% of all the new cars on the market in the UK are supplied by just 17 car makers, and that means they can control the market, set the prices, and rule their dealers with a rod of iron. Which isn't just bad news for you and me, it's bad news for car dealers too. It might surprise you to know that there are plenty of them out there who'd be absolutely delighted to see the back of block exemption as well.
Top Gear asked the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders if they agreed with the report's view that nearly half the practices allowed by block exemption are against the public interest. They told us block exemption exists to protect the consumer by providing a system of dealerships where customers can take their cars for a guaranteed level of service, repair and technical support.
At least the government has publicly admitted that there is a problem. What we need now is a fair and competitive market, and that means the end of block exemption and the end of car makers artificially controlling their markets and their prices.
When I tested the new Ford Fiesta back in November, you heard me say,
It's not a bad little motor.
Nice hair. But what I was really after was something with a bit more get up and go, a bit more zest, a bit more oomph. Aha! Excellent. Welcome to the Zetec S, the friskiest Fiesta available today. Using a 1.6-litre engine out of the Focus, it creates 103 brake horsepower and gets to 60 in 10 seconds. So the performance is good, even though it won't exactly break records. But it will still nudge the speed limit. Now, our current warm hatch champion is the Citroën Saxo Vitara. And although the Saxo will beat the Fiesta in the dash to 60, the Ford will out-accelerate it through the gears in third and fourth, showing the Saxo a clean pair of mud flaps. At £11,350, the Fiesta is priced pretty competitively. The Saxo VTR is slightly cheaper, but nowhere near as well spec'd. The Zetec S has gorged itself with goodies. It's got luxuries like electric windows, aircon and a CD player. And, surprisingly and completely unnecessarily, traction control. But before you start thinking that this must be a candidate for greatest car in the world, I'm afraid I've got a couple of hang-ups. The first is the interior. Okay, the switches are big, basic and easy to use, but everything is just so plastic-tastic. Another gripe is the steering wheel, which is completely unadjustable, so it makes it tricky to get comfy. The second problem is the car's looks. The blobby bottom and the sharp snout look as though they come from two completely different cars. Admittedly, Ford does know a thing or two about bolting on a decent body kit, but with this, they're just papering over the fact that the Fiesta is rather long in the tooth. But you can't afford to dismiss this car because of those gripes. It has a trump card so intoxicating that it's bound to seduce anybody looking for a car like this. And it's all to do with the driving experience. This Fiesta Zetec S is an absolute scream to pilot. Its racier brother, the Puma, demonstrated just how much fun you can have with a standard Fiesta chassis, and this proves it even more. The reduced ride height pretty much eliminates any body roll, plus the stiffened suspension aids a crisp turn-in as you're combating corners. The handling really is very sweet, as there's a warehouse full of grip and it always feels utterly stable. If you need a little lift on a dull Sunday, then a razz in this Fiesta will provide a great tonic. The gearbox has a really nice direct and sporty feel to it, and the power-assisted steering has been retuned, so it's now beautifully weighted. But I could do with a little bit more feedback from those front tyres. However, the brakes are bang on, and it's good to have the reassurance of ABS. All those elements blend beautifully to help make this seem such a together, well-sorted little car. It makes driving fun. If you can live with the confused styling, then the Fiesta Zetec S is a sizzler of a warm hatch.
In the hostile environment of the urban jungle, it takes a very special piece of kit to survive. The Subaru Predator P1 thinks it's that car. It's the new kid in town, and it's spoiling for a fight. The current ruler of the road isn't going to give up its territory without a battle. The Mitsubishi Evo 6, a car so well set up, nothing can live with it on the highways. It looks like a clenched fist and accelerates like a 1-inch punch. Two street fighters, the quickest point-to-point cars available today. But which is the best?
And where better to put them head-to-head than the environment in which they were spawned? So we've come to the rough terrain of Silverstone's rally sprint stage.
A course within a course, one lap inside the other, with a crossover just before the finish. Both cars set off together, but the question is, which will complete the 2 laps first? Vicky lines up on the inside for the first lap in the P1 Impreza. I'm on the outside in the Evo 6.
Where the P1 felt all big and muscly out on the road, it's as light as a balloon over this special stage.
The beauty about this Evo 6 is it has got such pinpoint turning. For a 4-wheel drive car, it's almost more like a rear-wheel drive.
Over such a loose surface, it really does feel as though it has come home. Down to the hairpin, pull the handbrake. Oh, she spins around so perfectly.
This Evo 6 has got the same 280 horsepower as Vicky's P1, but it's got a bit more torque. So although Vicky's on that inside lap, which is a bit quicker at first, we'll soon catch her up. And then we'll get her on the second lap.
But the trouble with this circuit is because it crosses over tracks, you don't know who is in the lead.
With Tiff firmly fixed in my rearview mirror as we approached the end of lap 1, it appeared I was up front. But as we reversed roles starting the second lap, all was still to play for.
Now I had the advantage of the inside track. By now, the Evo was kicking dust in its challenger's face. With only the bridge to go, we were now definitely ahead.
If you have a P1, beg, borrow, steal, buy a rally sprint circuit. I promise you, you will love it.
And here we are at the finish line.
Unfortunately, I think Tiff has won.
I think you'll find the P1 in P2.
OK, I suppose the Subaru and I aren't quite a match for Tiff and the Evo round here. But if all 4 of us were to enter a beauty contest, I'm sure we would be P1 and P2.
Next week, backseat driving. Vicky puts the Arrows team straight.
We all know it's unfair being a teenager as Harry Enfield's real Kevins find out in 35 minutes on BBC One. Next here on BBC Two, there'll hopefully be fewer tantrums in the Snooker World Championship. And Top Gear's Tiffany Dale is back in the driving seat, testing some of his favourite cars in this new BBC video.